Hey everybody, this is Chris, your TA one more time. Last video I'm going to do for you guys is basically just a little setup promo video that you guys can go through and see other portrait style photographers that have done a lot of studio work in the past. Some of them are incredibly famous. Others are famous in their own right, but are not as famous as the others. The reason why I'm going through and showing you this is because of the fact that your projects, your final portfolios are coming up. And I think it's really important to go through and understand what it looks like to go through and create a portfolio, to go through and create a really solid, constant lighting in your images. The reason why I go through and bring this up is because of the fact there needs to be continuity within the within your portfolios, which means that they have to flow together. Whether it's going to be portraits of somebody, if there has to be a single story in there. You can't have fashion and then fine art portraits and then so let's say somebody out in a field somewhere, like a wedding photography, senior pictures. It has to be one thing or another. The continuity in there has to be is significant. It has to be one story. Try to make each photograph stand out as an individual photograph, and then also being able to play along with the whole entire story within the whole entire portfolio. I know that can be from time to time a little hard to actually do, but the closer you can get into doing that, the better, because as a fine artist, it doesn't matter if you go into the fine art side or the commercial side after you guys are graduated from SCAD. That's going to be one thing that really sticks out, that really defines you as a photographer, being able to create that image that is mind-blowing and stellar and just breathtaking by itself. But once you put it also into a collection of work, whether it's going to be for a magazine, your own personal portfolio, an exhibition somewhere, it just really adds to the whole entire story, where people are going to spend hours looking at this and just be like, holy cow, wow, this is amazing. And also, it should really tell, or the portfolio should really say something about you as the individual photographer, regardless of who the client's for, whether it's for you or for a magazine or for a billboard or for a gallery, whatever it may be. It should say something for you itself, or as a photographer, regardless if it's traditional portraiture or traditional, product placement, product photography, or something very, very creative. Now, in this video, we're going to go through and see more traditional style portraiture. We're going to go through and see, or up to very stylized, very personal photography. The reason why I call it personal photography, it's not personal as far as for me, but it really defines, once you see the style of photography, you're never going to forget who the photographer is. I mean, it's the last photographer in here especially, you can go through and say, every single time you see an image that looks like this, you will be able to sit back and say, I'm pretty sure, like 99.9% sure, that this is that photographer. I'm going to show you, like I said, about 10 images from each photographer, from 3 different photographers. And I really hope that it goes through and it shows you all the different ways you can go through and play with studio lights, and how you can manipulate studio lights in a way that really benefits each and every image and what you want to do. Excuse the Facebook real quick down here. That's wasn't supposed to be up, but it keeps popping up. The first photographer we're going to look at, however, is Catherine Opie. Catherine Opie is a teacher out at UCLA. She's done a lot of great photography. She's actually one of the people I look at personally when I go through in creating my in the process of creating my master's thesis. She is probably the lesser known out of the 3 photographers I'm going to show you, but don't let that fool you. She is an amazing photographer in her own right. Her subjects for her portraits, like the ones I'm going to show you, usually center around the LGBT community. She usually uses a very simple lighting setup. Give me 1 second, actually. Okay, I think I took care of that Facebook problem so it doesn't keep popping up. But for the Facebook notifications. But I will say this, like I said, she usually uses a very simple lighting setup. The lighting setup allows for the person itself, for the subject matter, to go through and tell the story versus having dramatic lighting and dramatic makeup and hair and so on. Well, her images, the makeup does sometimes tend to be a little bit more dramatic. The reason why is because we're dealing with more of, let's say, the transgender community, as we'll see here in a few seconds. But that's the only reason why it's a little bit more dramatic. It's a little bit more in your face because of the fact we don't normally tend to see this on an everyday basis. Then at the very end of the quick 10 images, I'll show you what I found online as a quick little mock-up of what each photographer does, including Opie and including the other two photographers that I show in here. So you can see more or less how their setup goes when they're shooting in the studio. So without further ado, here's Catherine Opie. And as you can see, it's very just in-your-face, close-up portraits. We can see that it's some of it's stylized, some of it's very intimate, very personal. As far as what she does. Now, she doesn't just do the LGBT community. She has focused on children, but you can still see it's a singular lights. And, she has practices she does do some Rembrandt lighting here. She does do some very soft, diffuse lighting in the images. As you can see in some of the images, such as this image right here, where she does have the two side strokes coming in. You can tell that because of the way that the light reflects off the glasses, or the sunglasses, but it's still an even-based lighting. We still don't see any harsh shadows in any of her images of the subject, of the subject matter as the light hits them. And that's really important, especially to create a good portrait style lighting. It's not always necessary, but it is a key thing to go through and remember in every single one of our when you're doing these portraits. Now, yes, you will see image or in some photographs, as we see on camera left here, a nice gradual shadow or shading from light to dark, which is created by the subject matter that we're photographing here. However, it's not a harsh shadow. It's not a silhouette shadow, if you will, of the subject matter. It is a more gradual shadow from light to dark, which is not distracting from the actual child itself that we're photographing. This is actually from her collection of photography called Children. The other one was actually of... trying to remember what the other one's called. I cannot remember that one off the top of my head. I'm sorry about that. I had the notes somewhere else. Yeah, I cannot remember off the top of my head what that one's called. But this is her children's portfolio. And it's not a rather big portfolio that she has. I can't find a lot of images on that like I can the other one. But it's still rather really nice to go through and see what she can do and what Catherine Opie has done with strictly a single, basically really a single light source, except for this one. I think that there is a backlight that's coming in onto the yellow backdrop, which is the reason why we see that white halo around where the neck and the ears and the shoulders are. But you can see on the outlining figure that there is a nice yellow tint to that background, which I would almost believe would be close to the same or similar background that we see, at least in these two. I think also in this one too, it's a little bit more of an orange-red tint to it, so I'm not sure if it's the same background or not, but it's very, very close and very, very similar. But we see that there is really no harsh shadows at all. It's really important to keep that in mind. But like I said, I will show you every photographer's setup that that they do tend to normally use. This is Catherine Opie in her studio out in Los Angeles, California, I believe. You can see she's using one giant softbox with a strobe. She has other lights that she has in her studio. She has an umbrella with a strobe in the background, but she's obviously not using it. She is using it. She's using it as a flash that would be coming in as a reflected light that would be incredibly soft in this point in time, since it is already being diffused by that umbrella and then bouncing out the wall back to the subject matter, which is one reason why I kind of just don't think it's being used. But she's using this two soft boxes, one that's rather large on the which would be on the camera right of her and on the camera left of her, which would just evenly fill out the model and also highlight the background, so the shadows are no longer there. Really, just like I said, simple, easy peasy lighting scenarios that is really, really, really nice. The next photographer that we're going to get into is really well known. Her name is Annie Leibovitz. A lot of you might know her, some of you might not. She is probably the most well known for her celebrity portraits. She is very, very masterful within her dramatic lighting. She uses anything from 1 to 7 or 8 strobes per shoot. When everything comes down to it, she makes it look so natural. Like, the lighting is just amazing. I wish I could actually sit in with her sometime in a studio just to see how she goes through and does this, because her lights are, she's a master at light. It's beautiful. Leibovitz does tend to stick with around the celebrity portraiture. As I said earlier, and some of these you might recognize, some of these images you might recognize from movie posters or publicity images, or from magazines to TV ads, possibly if they use it still, or billboards, whatever the case may be. But each image is a masterpiece within itself, but yet you can still put it into a portfolio of portraits. This is another thing that I've talked about, where it's really important to try to have each image stick out for itself, but still be able to be a part of a portfolio. And so yeah, here's Annie Leibovitz, and I mean, it's just amazing work. Like, for instance, this one is for the movie La Mez. If you saw that, great image itself. Now, she does do a lot of black and whites, but like I said, she goes from what could be a singular light in here to which we know is a singular strobe light image in here. Singular strobe light image in here, the same background, same model, different pose, to maybe 2 different lights in here. Multiple lights in here, definitely multiple lights. We have one that's coming off from stage right. This is a self-portrait of Miss Leibovitz, but we also see that nice little halo effect around her head, which is going to be from a strobe going off in the background that's been dimmed down a little bit, probably in a Group B setting, and is so it's probably dialed down a half stop to a full stop lower than what the foreground flashes, which allows for a nice, subtle, soft background light to happen. But all these are portraits. She can go through. She has gone through and made every single one incredibly beautiful. This is another situation where she probably has that one strobe coming in from off camera left, and then 1 or 2 subsequent lights coming in from either side, from camera right and camera left, to help fill out the whole entire background, so there is no shadows coming in from the model, from, in this case, Christina Ricci, and affecting the backdrop. So it's just nice and smooth. All your attention is focusing on her, and not any shadows coming off of her affecting the backdrop. Another way you can go through and do this is by allowing the model to, like I said, in a couple of different feedbacks that I gave, make sure that the model is far enough away from the backdrop that if he or she does cast a shadow, it's not directly within the field of view of the camera, but rather off camera, and you can still get a nice, even lit background still. Here's Anne Hathaway, once again, from La Mez. Once again, very dramatic, very beautiful. Most likely top lit, 3/4 lit from the top, creating a nice little, almost a Rembrandt effect right there if you look at her. Anne Hathaway's, I guess, would be her left eye, almost that nice little triangle of light coming down. But also we have this nice little light, soft light coming in from the top right of the image, of our camera right of the image, which I would really, really be hard pressed to say that's not a separate strobe light coming in. It's just a beautiful image, and Miley Cyrus, one of the most controversial images of Miley when it all happened. I think this was for Vanity Fair magazine, but once again, we're dealing with two different light sources here. We are dealing with a light source that's hitting Miley directly from camera left, upper camera left, to the lighting source that's coming in from behind to go through and help eliminate some of the shadow. We still get a little bit of the shadow behind Miley on the camera, bottom camera right side, but it's not, it's not distracting. It's a natural, gradual thing. Natural, gradual lighting effect that's actually happening here. And then we have, other celebrities in here, but you can see that while we have a very nice lighting studio effect that's coming in, that's highlighting the face and is causing a little bit more of a dramatic shadow, the whole entire background still, in every single one of the images, there is no heavy shadows in there, and it allows the eye to focus on the main subject, which is, Dennis, the portrait going through, and the sitter of each portrait that's going through, and being able to have their photo taken. There's nothing in here in any one of her images that is distracting, except for what like, for instance, the tears in Iggy Pop's back of his pants out. It's not what we normally see, but it's who that person is. It's your eye is able to see exactly who's in here, what's in here, and there's no shadows. It's very beautifully, dramatically lit in every single one, and it tells a story. And light can really tell a story within the portfolios, and it's something that you should really take into account. Here's a quick example of one of the behind the scenes images that I saw of Annie Leibovitz in her shooting. As you can see, she uses quite a number of different lights here. I think I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different lights, 7 different lights possibly in here that she uses outside of just the regular studio, or in this case, concert hall lights. That's she's helping to illuminate the area so they can see how they're working. But I mean, she's using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least 6, maybe 7 different lights in here to create one of these very dramatic images. Like, for instance, this photo of Anne Hathaway, where she could be using 6 different lights, or 4 different lights in here to create a very dramatic image. And it's very easy to do as long as you can go through and master the lighting scenarios. It's the whole world is at your fingertips. The last photographer that we're going to be going through and dealing with here is a photographer by the name of David LaChapelle. Now, some of you, once again, might know David from his work. Some of you guys might be familiarized with his work. I pulled a lot of earlier studio images, and the reason why I pulled a lot of those earlier studio images because when he started off, he was actually really kind of dirt poor, just like the rest of us. Working in a very small studio space. He actually reused the same apartment room to do 90% of his work, which was quite amazing to go through and see. If you watch any documentary on him, there's a ton on YouTube I would recommend checking out. But yeah, if you hear him talk about his early works, especially this stuff right after he left the magazine he worked for under Andy Warhol, he had a very small studio space and reused the same studio space to go through and photograph all of these different celebrities that he did. I'm looking at my notes here, and one thing that I did mark down on here is the fact that one reason why I bring him in is because of the fact that his specialty, at least it used to be, was a beauty dish. Now, I know we didn't talk about that too much in class, and most of you guys probably wouldn't know what that is. What it is a flash that actually fits over the lens for the most part. Sometimes you can put it on a boom and have it, and on a light stand and rearrange it that way. But LaChapelle does tend to use, at least in these early photographs, the beauty dish on the that fits over the lens that actually really allows for every nook and cranny of the subject's face to be filled out or filled in. It's a very really nice tool, flash tool to be able to go through and use. If you can afford it, you can. There's also tutorials out there that shows how to make your own. You can go either way. You can do a DIY deal or pony up the money to go through and buy a nice beauty dish. Either way, I would say it is a good thing to invest in, especially if you're going to go through and do fashion photography or portraiture in the future. It's really, really nice. He does go from there, but he also goes through and pulls into other strobes to fill in the background and other images, or excuse me, other areas within the flash to eliminate those really harsh shadows that could be or that would be taken into that would be created by just using a beauty dish. Another thing that I think it really makes LaChapelle's work pop or stand out is the color that he uses. He really oversaturates and uses color to a T. Or I mean, he's mastered the color effect. And the reason why I bring this in is because I know a couple of you have tried to experiment with gels, which I think is really awesome for this class. I really would suggest to go through and use that. And if you want to continue to use these gels, look at the way that LaChapelle goes through and uses color. Study him a little bit. I think it's you're going to go through and have a lot of fun doing this. Experiment also with using different. I know a couple of you also used different background paper, different color background paper. Use that. Use the gels. See what you can go through and do. Experiment with this. LaChapelle should be your best idol when it comes to using color. Because, like I said, he's really mastered this, and you're going to see here in a second why I say that. It's just he pushes those colors to the limit, makes them pop, and with the way that he lights it with all the studio strobes that he uses, he's very much like Ann Leibovitz and uses multiple different studio lights to go through and give that color, make sure that there is no unnecessary or harsh shadows in each image, and just allows the colors and everything else just to come out with those lights. But here we go with David LaChapelle's work. We have Coolio here. As you can see, like I said, it pops. While we have the red, pink, and the green, if that's pink or red, but with the color contrast in there, it focuses your eye on there. But we have no unnecessary shadows. He lights it up very well. Even though we have highlights within the padded room, I guess the highlights create such a pattern on there that it's not really one of those. It doesn't distract from anything. It always goes back to almost a circular look, and it brings your eye back to, in this instance, Coolio. We also have, Tupac Shakur here, where we have, even though we have some highlights in there, or on the wall, it really it doesn't, with and some shadows, it doesn't detract anything from Tupac here. We actually are looking, at the image, and it's really, really beautifully lit. It is a little bit more dramatic. We do have some really nice shading on underneath Tupac's arm on his camera left, where it goes into his torso. But everything, but there is no shine or reflection, that is, even off the diamonds on his necklace here. I would, really look towards LaChapelle here, like I said, to see what he does. Right here's the Smashing Pumpkins, and the reason why I bring this image in, the reason why this is actually really nice, the image itself is actually flipped. I don't know why I found this image is actually flipped from what the book I have of his, which is LaChapelle Land, but it's simple lighting. He uses a couple of strobes to go through and highlight the band, the children who he's brought in to emulate the band as a younger age, but he's gone through and painted the room two different colors, that gold and that purple, and it really just makes it stand out. It's nothing special here. It's just how he does everything and places everybody. To David Beckham. which is very similar to that look that we have with Tupac. It's, just very simple beauty dish lighting with probably one or two more strobes in there to go through and help fill in some of those harsh shadows. Neither one of them do we have a harsh shadow that takes away from the lights. But he does go, or excuse me, takes away from the image, but he does go through and adds in extra detail that's very well lit, that does not have any special highlights on here. In this case, we have the pinup girls in the background, like a gym would be, to the different color of lights, or excuse me, the different shades of color within the room, to the soap bubbles and everything else in the necklace and the chain that doesn't have really highlights or strong highlights, or if they do have highlights, it goes back through and circles around, brings your attention back to the subject matter. Every single one of these images, even here, the highlights do not detract. They do not go through and take anything away, and there is no shadows. The color in here is beautiful. Like I said, it makes everything pop. It's really amazing. We have Brooke Shields here, where when he brings in neon lights, it all goes back to the subject matter that he's photographing. Here's Britney Spears. This is when Britney first basically broke out to the mainstream. I think she might have been 17, turning 18 years old at the time. I can't remember. I think this is for Rolling Stones back in, what was it, like 97? A lot of these images are from the 90s, that when he was making that huge name for himself, that, as we all know about him today, if you follow LaChapelle. But you can see she's on like a satin or silk bedspread where it is highly reflective, and he makes it work. Every single one of the folds in the blankets and in the pillows all go back and point directly back to her. So even when we have the highlights in here, they don't detract away from the image. Like I said, it all brings it back to her. She's evenly well lit, but the colors pop. And here's a more modern image that he's done. I think this was done in the mid 2000s, so maybe 5 to 10 years ago at the most. But it's really, once again, really well lit. He has that one light, though. He doesn't work with the beauty dish here. It's very similar, I would say, to this image where he has that one single strobe coming in, hitting the model or the subject matter in such a way, but then it also has that backdrop or the backlit very well. I do recall from watching one interview video of his where he states that this is the same room. He's photographed similar photos like this one, this one, this one. These are all shot in the same studio, which is crazy. He just goes through and adds different things to it and makes it appear to be different places, but they all are all in the same studio. But this is what you can do with light, how you can go through and play with strobes, how you can go through and play with color, and he really just makes everything bounce. And to show how his studio looks, here is an example of the studio space, the apartment that he uses, or at least at one point in time used to go through and create these. You can see he's dealing with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think 5 different lights in here, studio lights, not including all of the neon that he also has gone through and placed in here with the colors and the simple backdrop and everything else that he's done, the spray paint to go through and make this image just phenomenally crazy. I love his work. I think this would be a good photographer to go through and look at if you're trying to go through and get that wild and crazy color. But the reason why I did include these three photographers into this collection is to show that what you can do with light and how simple one strobe rigs can be, and how to utilize several different lights in your portfolio to go through and create one cohesive, one flowing, well-flowing portrait portfolio, and how important it is to go through and make sure that every single photo is powerful within its own right, but yet it can still go through and create a story. Like I said earlier, remember that these are lighting situations I'm showing you don't have to necessarily just be with portraits, but can also be done with product photography as well. This is a time where you can afford to go through and experiment with strobes and your reflectors and the different modifiers that you have for each strobe, whether it's going to be a softbox, whether it's going to be an umbrella, whether it's going to be barn doors or flags or whatever the case may be. Use those to your advantage. See what you can go through and do. Also experiment with other different lighting setups. You can go through and have odd lights in there. You can use flashlights. You can have lamps in there. You can have other lights in there. Make sure, however, that this is a must that I feel like I've been saying time and time again over the past 6 weeks or so. I know we're on the Hurricane Matthew schedule now, and we're week whatever week we're in right now, but we're in 7 weeks of the semester in real time, 7 to 8 weeks of the semester real time. Whenever you're watching this video, but I've been stressing, make sure you do white balance in your images, so then that the colors are correct, that it pops and it looks appropriate. Yes, if you use your strobes and then you use, let's say, your bedside lamp, you're going to have a little bit of a different lighting temperature in there, but that's fine as long as the main image itself is going to go through and be properly white balanced. Don't be afraid to go through and do that. There's so much that you can go through and do. Play around with the subs, play around with the gels, play around with different coloring backgrounds. If you want to go through and use some dark wood in there for product placement, use a dark wood in there. Make sure that then you don't use like a dark colored saucer or dark colored plate, because you want that plate if you're doing product photography to pop out. Or if you use a skull. I know one or two of you have used either skulls or taxidermied animals. Make sure that you go through and use, or at least deceased animals, deceased squirrels. Make sure that you have backgrounds or layouts that actually make those things pop. The same with the lights. Make sure you place your lights strategically in there to get rid of the shadows, so the shadows aren't distracting from your subject matter, and that everything is well lit. And make sure also that you do this before you snap the shutter. That's called something called seeing photographically. You want to be able to do this because it really eliminates a lot of time that you have to spend in post-production, color, making sure that everything's well lit enough, or even this number of shutter snaps that you have to go through and do. That's another reason why I included these behind the scenes looks of all the different photographers that I use, from Catherine Opie to Ian Leibowitz to David LaChapelle, is that you can see that everything's the way that they want it to be prior to taking that image. And it's really important to go through and do that, because it saves a lot of time in the aftermath of doing everything. And play around. You can use flashlights to make sure that that even the lights, if you don't have strobes, you just have like my SB700 flashlight I taught you about in the first video. That's not a constant strobe. If just put a flashlight up there, see how that light's going to go through and react in this certain image or this certain lighting situation. I can't stress that enough. See photographically, color balance, white balance, and make sure that everything is good before that you go into your final post production. I see no reason why you shouldn't have mind-blowing images, every single one of you, by the time that you turn in your portfolio, your finished portfolio. I can't actually wait to see what you guys come up with. I'm really excited. I know that over the past several weeks that you guys have grown from what you guys started off with to where you guys are at now, and it's beautiful. All of your guys' work is coming along so well. I can't wait to see what you guys bring into the class for the next few weeks. I hope that this is very inspirational to you guys. If you once again have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me through email, through comments. I know one or two have reached out through comments on Blackboard. I'm always on Blackboard. I am as well. Like I said, email me. There's a lot of different ways you can go through and do this. Don't be afraid to experiment. That's one reason why we have these critiques as well, is to go through and tell you what's going right, what's going wrong, what's can be utilized, and how to go through and make improvements. I know that Professor Bradford is also always available to go through and talk to you guys if you guys need any help. I hope this tutorial has been very helpful. Like I said, these three photographers are Catherine Opie, Ann Leibowitz, and David LaChapelle. LaChapelle has a really, really amazing website you can go through and look at. Opie and Leibowitz don't necessarily have their own websites per se, but their work has been, especially Leibowitz, has been shown and photographed and used so much. You type in their name, go to Google Images, and you'll find probably a lot of these images that I found on here as well that I used. But they have amazing work. I hope you enjoy this. Like I said, ask questions if you need to, but experiments. I look forward to seeing what you guys are doing. Will do in the upcoming weeks. And thanks for watching.